Once upon a time, in the village of Ekanda, there was a forbidden river that was left abandoned by the villagers. The stories of an evil mermaid had been told for many generations to the villagers, especially the men. To beware of the river and never go there, the elders of the village told the people that anyone who ever went to the village would never come out again. Everyone in the village feared and avoided the river except a man called Ebe. He was a brave and bold man who never cared about anything the villagers said. He had been sneaking into the forbidden river to fish since he started his fishing business. The market day was the following morning, and Ebe nonchalantly, like he used to, packed his fishing net and went to the forbidden river. As he started fishing, his hook caught something very heavy. Ebe was very excited, and as he pulled upwards, the surface of the water started to glow yellow and brighter. He didn't know what he was pulling, but he kept pulling to the surface. Ebe was shocked when he saw a glowing mermaid unconsciously hooked by his fishing string. As he dragged her to the river studying her body, the mermaid suddenly opened her eyes and pulled Ebe down with her deep into the river. In a matter of seconds, he was in a cave with shallow water and airspace. After all these centuries, I have finally gotten a man, the golden mermaid said as she moved close to Ebe, caressing his body. Ebe begged the mermaid to let him go, but she refused. "I will make you my husband," the mermaid said. Every night she would lay with Ebe. One day when the mermaid wasn't around, Ebe tried to swim out of the cave. When he managed to get to the surface, he weakly ran to the village. Everyone was surprised to see Ebe after months of being missing. When he returned, he told them his story and what the golden mermaid had done to him. After a few days, when Ebe thought everything was over, the golden mermaid was already pregnant, and she needed Ebe to be with her when she wanted to give birth. The golden mermaid then swam to the shore of the river and started singing a song which got to Ebe where he was. The song pulled him to the river, and with Ebe by her side, she gave birth to a child, a girl. A villager saw Ebe being pulled mysteriously and told the other villagers who noticed Ebe was missing again. They all ran to the forbidden river. They saw the golden mermaid with Ebe, and they ran towards the mermaid and stabbed her. Ebe was shouting, telling them to stop, but the villagers had already killed the golden mermaid. The baby in Ebe's hands was crying loudly. The villagers demanded the mermaid's baby must also be killed. Ebe refused to give the baby, and the villagers still insisted. Then he managed to escape, and Ebe ran away from the village with his baby in his hands. Ebe went to another village where he worked tirelessly to help his baby, and he named her Deca, which means mother's death. Deca grew up to be a strong, beautiful lady, unaware of her past. Ebe only told her mother had died during childbirth. One fateful morning, as Deca was walking down from a hill, she heard a strange noise of drums and celebration from a distance. It sounded very new, strange, and appealing to her for some reason, so she decided to follow the sound. She followed the sound and got to a very large river where she saw some of the villagers swimming. Deca could now hear the drumming and celebration noise louder but couldn't see any sign of people celebrating. She entered the water and started swimming. Suddenly, the noise and song became louder and clearer. It was from the water under the water. Deca was shocked, and she looked at the villagers swimming around the river. "Good evening, people. Can you hear the song from underneath?" But they only cast sarcastic glances at her. A girl named Metu swam towards her. "Hello, which sound are you talking about?" she asked Deca, who also moved towards her. "I'm hearing some music from under the water." "Don't tell me you can't hear it," It sounds very. Before Deca could finish her speech, Metu suddenly vanished, pulled with incredible speed down under the water. Deca quickly followed. As Deca swam downward, she saw two big mermen pulling Metu, who was choking and gasping in the water, away. Deca swam with great speed, following them, and the merman turned around, looking at her in amusement and disbelief. After swimming down for a few minutes, she finally saw where the drumming was coming from. A mighty kingdom of mermaids and mermen were holding a festival, drumming and dancing. As the mermaid people saw the strange girl swimming towards them, following their warriors, they quickly swam towards her and grabbed her. They brought her to the front of the festival, and a very large man with two tails swam boldly towards her. "Who are you, and how come you could get into our kingdom?" It was then that Deca discovered she had been breathing underwater. "I don't know, I just followed the kidnappers," she replied, and this shocked mermaids people more. The two-tailed merman then swam towards her. "You're an abomination, and we don't like abominations," he turned to the mermaid people and shouted, "The gods have blessed us with 2 sacrifices today. It wouldn't be one girl like we are used to." And all the mermaid people shouted happily. They tied Deca up and placed her with the unconscious Metu and pulled them both to the center of the river kingdom, where a giant fish with sharp teeth was sleeping with its mouth open. "You shall taste good to our gods," the two-tailed merman shouted, and they threw both Deca and Metu into the mouth of the fish. As the fish swallowed both of them, Deca's skin touched one of the fish's teeth, and it broke her skin. As soon as Deca and Metu reached the stomach of the fish, her blood fell into the fish's stomach. The fish let out an extremely loud scream noise that immediately woke Metu, and it swam away from the mermaid people. This was unbelievable to the mermaid people because the fish hadn't moved from that spot for centuries. The great fish swam violently through the water because it is against its rules to taste a mermaid's blood. Still making an incredibly loud noise, it dashed through the river, and after a few seconds, it spat out Deca and Metu on the shores of an uninhabited jungle far away. As Deca and Metu landed on the shore, their hearts were pounding loudly, and they ran to the shores, clinging tightly to each other. After a few minutes, Deca looked at Metu. "Are you okay? You were unconscious all the time we were at the mermaid people's kingdom." Metu looked at her in panic, still trying to catch her breath. "Mermaid's kingdom? What do you mean, mermaids? Did we just come out from a very giant catfish?" she asked, and Deca nodded. "We have to leave this jungle and find a village to stay before night falls," Deca said, and they both went into the jungle. They walked for hours, each one clinging to the other in fear. They sang songs until they finally arrived on a walk path. As they walked a little further, they saw a signboard saying, "Welcome to Ekanda village." Deca and Metu quickly ran inside and talked with some of the elders of the village, telling them their story. They watched both of them skeptically and also told them the story of the mermaid they had slain years ago. The elders accepted them and gave both of them a room to pass the night. On the morning of the next day, Metu and Deca decided to continue on their journey, but first, they would have to take their bath since they could still smell the fish on their body. They asked around for water, and the villagers directed them to the river where Deca was born. Unbeknownst to her, they both went there with their pots. As soon as Deca's hand touched the water, she transformed into a golden mermaid. Metu, watching her, screamed, and soon everyone in the river started screaming, "Mermaid! Mermaid!" The village men were alerted, and Deca was still in shock, looking at her scales. Metu kept staring at her in disbelief. When the village men arrived with their arrows, they shot at Deca, and Metu ran to stop them, but the arrow hit her in her arm. Deca shouted loudly, watching Metu fall to the floor. Deca was crawling to Metu when the village men of Ekanda carried her and Metu to the center of the village. They put Metu, bleeding out, beside Deca, and they surrounded her and started singing, "Every mermaid must die in Ekanda. Every mermaid must die." Deca begged them to help her bleeding friend and explained how she didn't know how this happened to her, reminding the elders of her previous story. Then one of the elders approached her with a machete. "Where is your mother, young lady?" Deca told him her mom died during childbirth, and her dad raised her on his own in another village. "Is your dad the fisherman by any chance?" The old man asked, and Deca nodded in confirmation, pleading with them to save her bleeding friend. Matata then said, "I killed your mother, you. This evil mermaid, you are the daughter of Ebe, right? The traitor who betrayed his own village." On hearing what the old man said, Deca stopped and looked at the man. "What did you say, Mr. Man?" Deca said with a calm, angry, shaky voice. Matata responded, "I said I stabbed your mother with the same cutlass I will use to end you." Deca let out a scream so loud and powerful, Ebe, who had been searching for Deca all over the village, heard it. The mermaid people of the river heard it. "That's one of ours," the two-tailed king muttered, and suddenly water came out from the floor surrounding Deca and Metu, forming a large tornado. As the roaring wave of water surrounded them, the great fish came out, opening its mouth, and Deca carried Metu inside the fish, and the tornado destroyed everything in the village of Ekanda. As the great fish swam away, Deca attended to Metu in the stomach of the fish. The great fish swam back to the kingdom of the mermaids. When the great fish arrived, all the mermaids and mermen gathered in front of the fish, which opened its mouth. As Deca swam out, they all looked at her in amusement. "She's of royal blood," they said to themselves. The two-tailed merman swam out again. "You are of royalty. You are always welcome in our midst, but I sense danger flowing through your veins," he said. Then Deca told him about the injured Metu, and he sent some mermaids to nurse her wound. They then performed some findings to find out who Deca's parents were, and they discovered it was the outcast Queen of War who was banished from the kingdom. Deca told them the story of her life growing up, and then it all clicked that she had both the blood of the land and the sea flowing in her. The two-tailed merman told her to call her father and tell him she was okay, but Deca didn't have any means of doing that. "I don't know how that works," Deca said, and all my people around her looked at her smiling. "You called everyone in the kingdom a few minutes ago. That ability is rare even for queens, and now you can't call your father," the two-tailed merman said, smiling. "Anytime you hum a melody from your heart, the family member or loved one you're thinking about will hear you and come to you. That's how it works, and that's how you've always done it," he said. A mermaid approached Deca and the two-tailed merman as they were speaking. "My king, the injured lady in the great fish will need to be treated at the surface. Our medicine is keeping her stable, but she can't eat food." The two-tailed merman nodded to Deca, and she went inside the great fish to see Metu, who was still shocked to witness everything that was happening. "Oh my God, you are a mermaid, a golden one," Metu said, touching Deca's tail, who smiled at her. "I will be taking you home now, plus I have to see my dad." Then Metu nodded, and the great fish closed its mouth, carrying them to the surface. Ebe, on the other hand, ran to his previous village and saw that the whole village was destroyed, and some armed men still remaining saw him and chased him back. "See what your useless daughter has caused. You and your daughter will both die," they shouted as Ebe ran back, assured his daughter was still alive. Suddenly, he heard a familiar song that pulled him towards the river in his new village. There, he met his daughter Deca, Metu, and the mighty fish. Ebe ran towards Deca and hugged her. Deca told him everything he had kept from her, and she showed him her friend Metu and the great fish. Deca told her father Ebe to carry Metu to a clinic to help her and reassured him she would soon be back. As Ebe carried Metu and went forward a few steps, a mob of angry men suddenly ran angrily towards Deca and the great fish, and both quickly swam back into the river. Unknown to Deca, her father and Metu had already been captured. The armed men from the village of Ekanda were now in agreement with the new village after they saw what Deca had done to their village. They wanted Deca and her father Ebe dead. They captured Ebe in a prison, and after a few days of Metu getting well, they carried her to the shore and told her to call the fish and deliver a message to Deca and the mermaid people that they have Deca's father and she must come out with all the mermaid people to save him. Metu told them she doesn't know anything about calling the great fish, but the men beat her mercilessly till Metu was crying in pain. The great fish suddenly jolted in the mermaid's kingdom and dashed out, swimming violently towards the surface, shocking everyone, including Deca, because no humans can connect with the great fish. As the men were still hitting Metu, the great fish jumped out of the water, biting and hitting the men away, and it swallowed Metu and swam back inside the river to the mermaid's kingdom. When it arrived, Deca could tell Metu was inside, and she swam inside the fish to meet her. Metu, badly beaten, told Deca what was going on and the war that's about to happen. Deca was angry, and she yelled, holding her head, which also pulled all the my people closer to the fish. She swam out and told them the men on land had captured her father, and they wanted war. Some of the mermaid people shouted in agreement for war, but the two tales reminded them of the tales of Deca's mom, the queen of chaos and war, and advised Deca to go alone peacefully the next day and prevent war. Deca agreed, and when the following day arrived, she got prepared. She and Metu, in the great fish, swam to the surface. As they arrived at the surface, they met the angry village men in thousands and the man who slayed her mom, holding Ebe in his hands, staring at her menacingly. Then he spoke, "We told you to bring the whole fish people, but you came alone. You disobeyed us, bringing a weak child and a dumb fish." Deca swam forward, her tail turning into legs as it touched the shore. "I come in peace, mister. I'm sorry I ruined your village. I'm the one guilty, and I'm the one to be punished." Tamar said. "Punished," she said. "Punished, you shall be put to death, little fish, but since you said punish, I shall punish you first by slitting your father's throat," he said. As he cut Ebe's throat, and Ebe fell to the ground, bleeding out, looking into Deca's eyes. Deca looked at her father, choking on the floor, her golden eyes shining bright yellow, and she let out a scream that moved the whole river. The great fish roared with her, and her scream pulled all the mermaid people out of the river. A war broke out, and Deca ran towards the man who killed her father. She used a wall of water to stop him from moving and marched towards him. She held his throat firmly. "I should punish you by killing your wife and kids, but I guess I already did that. I shall perhaps give you a more painful death. Choking you would be mercy," Deca said as she carried him towards the great fish, which removed his lower body, munching on him gladly. Metu jumped out of the great fish, hiding behind it fearfully, as some men came to attack Metu. The great fish fought violently, being bruised by arrows and spears. Deca fought, slaying men, and her anger only increased as she saw her dead father lying on the floor. The village men kept shooting arrows and recruiting more troops, but Deca was filled with anger to retreat. All she wanted was all of them dead. The village men finally overpowered the great fish, and one of them caught Metu beside the great fish. "Little traitor," he said, and plunged the spear into her heart, which also penetrated the great fish. Both of them screamed loudly, which got to angry Deca fighting violently. She turned around and saw the last string of her earthly relationship stabbed. The great fish tried to fight, but it was already badly injured. As Deca ran towards them, when she got to Metu and held her in her arms, touching her fluffy hair, she died, and the great fish mourned its last breath. Tears filled Deca's eyes. On a single day, she had lost all her family. When the two-tailed merman saw they weren't winning, he ordered his mermaid people to retreat, and this angered Deca even more. She turned and stood up, lifting her hands. A wave of mighty waters arose from the water following her, and as she dropped her hands, it crashed on her and all the village men on the shore, killing every single one of them. Since then, Deca was never seen again. The river color changed into two unmixing color waters with different paths. Some people say it is the blood of the fallen village men and mermen, while some say it is the spirit of Deca, the spirit of land and water still hovering inside the river. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support helps us grow our channel. See you in our next story. Bye.
Subscribe to my channel.